Welcome to the Cobalt Chapel. This is a special room we built in the house that my sons and I use as our offices. I wanted to share it with you. It has a unique history for me and the rest of us. Some years back, I was in Russia. My middle son, Cullen, who was barely 14 at the time, was with me. We were doing a scout for a movie I've written called Love and Honor, a movie that was in the works then and is newly back in the works now. We were touring sites that had been important in Russia in the time of the Tsars. And one of the most special was called Tsarskoye Selo. It was on the outskirts of St. Petersburg. It was being restored while we were there, beautifully restored with gold leaf and new plaster and new paintings, because it had been sacked during World War II by the German troops that had surrounded what was then Leningrad and was now once again St. Petersburg. The curator, the main historical expert at restoring buildings in all of Russia, was there, and he was giving us a tour of this magnificent palace. It had a room in it called the Amber Room. It had a ballroom that looked like solid gold. It was just on fire with light. I asked him if there was a chapel, and he got quiet, and he led us down to the very end of the palace complex into an incredible room that was almost fully restored now, but still in the process. It was 2 stories, and we stood on the upper balcony of the room, and he took my arm and he pulled me a few inches to the side, and he said, "Where you are standing is where the Tsarina stood, the queen of all the Russias, when they were having services." And then he got quiet and he stared down and he said, "The Bolsheviks outlawed services here when they had made Christianity illegal. They outlawed the services in about, 1917, I think he said. And then he said, when the Germans took this area and they sacked this palace, they used this chapel as a garage for their bicycles." And I understood that he formed a linkage in his heart between the outline of the practice of the faith in that chapel and its ultimate desecration. And I looked at him and I said, "I attended seminary, and I want to go back home and tell the people at that place that's training young pastors that they need to come here. They need to bring their young students here so they can see the power of faith from you." And he turned these sky blue Russian eyes toward me and he said, "Come with me, we drink vodka." Now, I'm not much of a drinker, and it was about 10 in the morning, and my 14-year-old son was with me. So I wasn't planning to drink much. But we sat down at a big table, he and the whole group we had brought for scouting the movie, and my young son, Cullen. And he poured shots of vodka, and he lifted his glass and went, "Na zdorovye," and he threw the vodka down his throat, and I took one for the team, and it's like fire going down my throat. As soon as my glass was hitting the table, he was pouring another shot, which I abstained from doing. But then he told me what he'd brought us there to tell us. He said, under communism, it was impossible to amass any money. But I always had a dream that my wife and I would have a child, and I would leave my child. And then he paused and he calculated in his head the amount in dollars from rubles. He said, I dreamed of leaving my child $5,000, which for us was an enormous fortune. That was my goal. And I wasn't able to save any money, and my wife and I weren't able to conceive. But I got a call from Boris Yeltsin, who was then the head of Russia, who said, you must come to Moscow because Bill Clinton, who was then president of the United States, is coming to Russia, and they want to tour one of our best museums, and it is not ready. It's still in disarray. It needs your touch. It needs your restoration. So he said, I went to Moscow and I restored the museum. I got it done so it was beautiful. And then the President of the United States could see it, and the head of Russia could be proud of it. And as a reward, he gave me a check for $5,000. And I came home to St. Petersburg. And I thought about that dream I'd had to leave the money to my child. But my wife and I had tried everything. We'd seen every doctor, every priest, every advisor, every psychologist, and we hadn't been able to conceive. So I took that $5,000 and I donated it to the restoration of the Cobalt Chapel. That took my breath away. And then he said, and the day I wrote the check, my wife called me to say she was pregnant. And our daughter, Anna, was the first one christened in the Cobalt Chapel since the Bolsheviks outlawed services there almost a century ago. So when we decided to build a special place in our offices, our place of work, our place of our calling, we thought, we can't build a replica, but we'll build a reminder of the Cobalt Chapel. And here it is. I'll take pictures and share them with you.